Before we start the podcast, I just want to talk to you guys about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast, and let me explain why. First of all, it's free, so you can get it anywhere, anytime, costs no money. Second of all, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, whatever device you choose. As well as that, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast too with no minimum listenership. That means a nobody podcast like mine can make money off of sponsorships. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So if you haven't tried Anchor or you want to start a podcast and haven't tried it yet, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started.
You're listening to the Dillo's Dojo podcast, hosted by Dylan Dillo Smith, Midwestern Ontario one and only MMA podcast, where we interview MMA fighters and voice actors like Sergeant Frank Woods.
What is up, everybody? It is Dillo, and welcome to another episode of the Dillo's Dojo podcast. This is episode 39, and this week we have no UFC event, but for those MMA fans like myself who have a bloodlust, UFC Fight Pass has such a great selection of regional MMA that even though I had no UFC this weekend, I was still satiated. Like I was still satisfied with what I had and what I was given. So we have quite a bit of regional MMA to talk about, one announcement to do before we get into the regional MMA, and also, why not? Because I haven't yet, and I usually do whenever these seasons happen. Let's talk about The Ultimate Fighter Season 30. So without further ado, let's get into that announcement, because I'm sure you guys are actually curious on what the announcement is. So, the announcement that I'm going to be talking about, specifically, if you guys haven't seen it already, you guys probably would have if you followed me on Twitter. If not, then follow me at Dillo Ross with 3 O's in the Dillo. But if you didn't follow me on Twitter and you didn't see the announcement, I am officially the official voice of MMA gaming. And for those asking, because I know there's going to be people asking, what is MMA gaming? MMA gaming is a esports organization for EA UFC 4 players and potentially EA UFC 5 players when the game comes out, that we are basically the competitor to the ESFL. If any of you remember me talking about that like 2 years ago on the podcast, probably not, but ESFL is basically the premier leader in UFC esports right now, and MMA gaming is quickly rising to be a very competent competitor to exactly that, with almost 300 fighters on the roster, 300 players on the roster. We're quickly growing, and I'm so fucking honored to be a part of it and to be their official voice work, their official highlight announcer, their commentator, everything. I'm their official voice, and honestly, it's an absolute honor and a pleasure to be aboard such a quickly rising project. But without, enough of that, I'm done sucking their dick. I know you guys want to hear about all the regional MMA that happened this weekend, but first, let's talk about The Ultimate Fighter, because there has been 3 episodes that have happened since since the whole thing started, since I started doing my podcast again, and not a single fucking podcast have I talked about it. So, that's exactly what I'm doing, is I'm going to talk about it, because why not? I did it last year, last year. I did it last year when season 29 happened, so why not do it when season 30 is happening? So, this season is Juliana Pena versus Amanda Nunes for coaches, and the weight classes that they're choosing are particularly heavyweight and women's flyweight. So they're essentially trying to strengthen the women's flyweight division. Good for them, honestly. It's starting to become quite the shallow division, and, bringing some more blood into the division might help that. I don't know, but it might. Anyway, So basically, some people on the Ultimate Fighter, like on this season anyway, are like Juliana Miller, which is a flyweight, a young flyweight who's around my age. Kamaru Usman's brother is on there. MMA veteran Bobby Maximus is also on there. They've got quite a few people on there, and the first 3 episodes have not disappointed. Of course, we have our drama with the women. They don't fight amongst themselves. It's just more so, oh, this shit's happening to me in my life. That shit's happening to me in my life. There was I think the second episode where, or the second or third episode, something like that, where one of Team Pena's girls actually ended up losing her father while she was in the house. So some shit like that happened. First episode, I believe that was the first episode. So the first episode, that girl ended up winning her fight after 3 rounds of a hard fought decision. And then in the second episode, which made me hate Kamaru Usman's brother's fucking opponent. I can't remember the guy's name now, but absolutely hated him. I don't know what the fuck his issue was. Oh yeah, it was like Mitch something. And God, he was just the most unbearable fucking person in the house. Like, reminds me of fucking season 1 flashbacks where all of them were edgy fucking 20-year-olds trying to talk shit to each other, trying to start fights with each other because we're all tough badasses with testosterone. Well, everybody else is just big chilling in the house. This Mitch guy is coming in talking shit to Kamaru Usman's brother, saying he's going to send them to the gulag, saying that he's a fucking pussy, that they were supposed to fight before, but, Muhammad Usman pulled out. Just stupid shit like that. So it was hilarious when Muhammad Usman just completely fucking dominated him and ended up winning like a 3-round decision, I think, against him, and fucking sent him packing like a little bitch and just started fucking the guy was just complaining and bitching and whining as he was being sent away from the house. It was just hilarious. It was perfect. And apparently I wasn't the only one that thought this way about this guy too, because when I posted about it on Twitter, there was a couple people like retweeting my shit, liking my shit, basically agreeing with my sentiments that this fucking guy sucks, that Muhammad Usman did all of us a favor in kicking this guy's ass out of the house early. The third one, I believe, was a complete replacement fight. So this week's episode that happened was a complete replacement fight, and I can't remember the girls' names. One of them is like something Lara Gallardo. So she came in as a complete replacement. She's, well known from Combate Global, and honestly just put on a complete show. And it was just surprising because I haven't watched all of the seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, but I think this is one of the first times where both fighters that fought to go on to the next stage of the house were replacements, were each team's replacements. Like, one girl had to be replaced, but the funny thing is she didn't get kicked out of the house. It was just like, you're injured, but you're still good to fight, so we'll replace you for this week, and you'll get to fight next week. But the other girl got booted out of the house because she couldn't make weight after like a miscarriage or something, so her body still believed she was pregnant or some shit like that, some weird biological stuff like that. So she had to leave the house. She couldn't make weight, unfortunately, and the Lara Gallardo came in and put on a complete show. But that was this week's episode. So it's just been constant drama like that where the women can't make weight because they just came off a pregnancy or something like that, or somebody's family died, or some stupid shit like that, or there's some young gun like Mitch trying to fucking talk shit to old dudes, and the old dudes are just not having it. They're not getting angry. They're not giving them the time of day. They're just laughing in their faces. So honestly, this season has been pretty chillaxed so far, and I can't wait to talk about it more. I'm going to try to keep talking about it episode by episode each week, but I'm excited to see who makes it onto the finale, and I'm just excited because it all leads to that rematch title fight between Amanda Nunes and fucking Juliana Pena. So I'm more excited about that than I am the actual finale, but I also love the whole reality show gimmick, so it just keeps me watching each time. But anyway, that's it for Tough 30. We'll talk more about it next week because I know there's going to be an episode next week, so I'll have shit to talk about next week. Anyway, let's get into our regional MMA, starting with Cage Warriors 137 and 138. Not because they came first, but because, one, they're first on my notes, a little sneak peek, and two, because they were the first ones that I actually watched this weekend, because I gotta be honest with you, I don't think I've ever said this before, other than on Twitter very, very, very recently. I gotta say, I love regional MMA, but I think my favorite regional promotion, and honestly, I don't know if you could call it that. I guess you could, but the absolute caliber of stars they keep pumping out says otherwise. But anyway, my favorite regional promotion has to be Cage Warriors. The shows that they continuously put on Fight Pass keeps me subscribed. Not, I mean, obviously, yeah, going back and watching the fight nights and shit does too, but that shit keeps me subscribed. Knowing that I get Cage Warriors whenever they do their events and I get to watch that shit live, and knowing that Cage Warriors puts on absolute explosive fights, it's great. And this weekend was no exception. Absolutely banging fights this weekend. Not a single title fight between Cage Warriors 137 and 138, which is really weird for Cage Warriors. Usually when they do their double headers or, their fucking triple headers, they have at least one or two title fights. This time, both main events were non-title bouts. They were just regular fights. And the weirdest part was, I believe both main events included former middleweight title challengers. So I don't know if both main events are setting up like a number one contendership bout or like an interim bout or something. I don't know. But it was just really weird that those were the circumstances. But anyway, let's get into this card. Starting with the first fight of 137, we had Omran Shaban going up against Jack Dedames. Dedames. Fuck it. Dedames. We're going to call him Dedames. And Omran Shaban coming in with the fucking brutal anaconda choke after a grind fest in the first round, fucking rising himself to a 3-1 record and just surprising the commentators because everybody was freaking out that night when it fucking happened. And that wasn't like, this was the first fight of the night. This brings us to the second fight of the night where we had Shahib Yusuf going up against Mikhail Fulch. And holy fuck, like I said, the first fight of the night was a grind fest that ended in a fucking incredible submission. The second fight of the night was a back and forth striking affair where Shahib Yusuf fucking clinched him against the cage near midway through the first round and just landed brutal knees, man. Just knee after knee after knee that, just forced Mikhail Fulch to just keel over and the ref to step in. It was fucking brutal. It was fun. Then we had a fight between Danilo Peglariccio and Benoit Blanche, where both guys grounded out a fight, but it was ultimately Peglariccio. I love saying that name, by the way. Peglariccio is fucking awesome, but it was ultimately Peglariccio that edged out a dominant unanimous decision, bringing us to the fourth fight of the night, where it was Adam Cullen up against Arnaud Kerfala. I think that's what it says. I'm reading my notes right now, and sometimes I make typos, but I'm assuming that's what it says. So Adam Cullen versus Arnaud Kerfala. I remember this submission specifically. It was an absolutely lightning quick anaconda choke where he completely switched the ground game. Fucking Kerfala went to a fucking takedown, and the scramble happened, and during the scramble, Adam Cullen slapped in the anaconda choke, reversed the position, and just squeezed. A minute and 20 seconds into the first round, just slapped that anaconda choke in for the win. It was awesome. And if that wasn't enough for your fucking choke fetish, I'm never saying that again. I'm sorry. I'm never going to say that again. So if that wasn't enough for your submission thirst, we had another submission in the fifth fight of the night, the co-main event between Don Duij and Bogdan Barbu. And it was a first round triangle choke of Don Duij. I'm just going to say that, Duij, where he ended up getting the triangle choke for the win. This is the only thing I hate about European MMA. Even when I hear their names said by the commentary team when I'm watching, it's hard to remember, it's hard to pronounce. Even then, I'm pretty sure the commentary team is pronouncing it weird. But anyway, to the main event. We had Matthew Bonner, who is the former middleweight champion, going up against Yoel Kouadja. And honestly, it was just a fucking all-around grind fest where it was just nothing but grappling. And Matthew Bonner slapping in a one-armed rear naked choke and squeezing tightly for the tap where Matthew Bonner rises to a 12-7 record and potentially getting himself up to that number one contender spot, maybe. Like I said, that's probably what these two events were for, was for that bout to set up. I'm not sure, but that was it for the Cage Warriors 137 card. Nothing of name value, no big stars, but still great fights all around, and that's exactly why I love Cage Warriors. But then we had another one on Saturday. We had Cage Warriors 138, folks. That was a shorter card. We had like 5 fights, but it's still same thing. We had one fight that went to a unanimous draw that was actually a back and forth fight, so nobody was mad going home. And then the rest of the fucking card was finishes. So let's get into that, shall we? So starting off the fight night, we had George Tanza going up against Scott Peterson. And like I said, the only decision on the card, I shit you not, it was a back and forth fight between both guys. A case could have been made for either guy, and I can see where the judges were coming from. The fight ends up in a unanimous draw where all fucking judges saw it as a complete draw on all sides. And like I said, even though it was the only decision on the card, it was a back and forth fight. That leads us into the next fight between Obon Elliott and Herkus Lukosunius. I'm going to assume that's what it says. I don't know how I get these fucking accents at the time. I'm reading this on my phone. But anyway, this fight was a complete grapple fest as well, where both guys tried to grind out the submission win, where it was ultimately Obon Elliott that slapped in the rear naked choke tight and ended up winning via rear naked choke in around almost 3 minutes into this first round. Now, the third fight of the night, I lied. This was the other decision, but I forgot about it because, again, it was a dominant decision. Wasn't anything of note. Tom Mearns coming in, dominating Orlando Wilson Prinz, and just getting the 30-27 decision, making it easy for the judges. Moving us on to our co-main event where we had Luke Shanks. My God, I love Luke Shanks, the former flyweight champion. I believe he was making his bantamweight champion debut. His bantamweight debut against Josh Reed, who's a guy in Cage Warriors that never turns down a fight offer and always brings the fight. So it was expected with an absolute killer in Luke Shanks and a fucking just absolute dog in Josh Reed that there was going to be a brawl. And a brawl did ensue, with Luke Shanks coming back after facing some heavy adversity from Josh Reed to slap in a rear naked choke and edge out the win within under 4 minutes of the first round. So there you go. And in the main event, we had Leon Aliu going up against James Webb in the main event at middleweight. Again, like I said, I think the two main events that were happening were supposed to set up for, I think, a number one contendership bout. So I think that's why the two events happened and why one of them, it didn't exactly happen to have a title fight. But anyway, I think that's exactly why they did the two events. Anyway, back to the fucking main event. Leon Aliu ended up knocking out James Webb via punches within under 2 minutes, actually, of the first round. So it was a great way to end Cage Warriors 138. A great way to end a double header for Cage Warriors. Just two exciting cards back to back, night after night. So it was really enjoyable, honestly. And like I said, this is the reason why I love Cage Warriors, because even when they do just one event, it's amazing, but they usually do two events, and both cards are fucking insane. Like, they're both popping. So that's why I love Cage Warriors, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, because regional MMA ain't regional MMA unless I bring up shit like Cage Warriors, LFA, CFFC. Speaking of which, we are going to bring up CFFC later on. But next, we're going to talk about Unified MMA 45, which is a Canadian promotion. So let's get into that. So this one, Unified MMA has some weird weight classes. Fuck it. They had a featherweight championship fight, which is normal. Then they had a heavyweight championship fight, which is normal. But just 175. That's their next weight class. There's no specific name for it. I don't think that's their middleweight, but it's 175 pounds. Huh. I mean, it's no weirder than 165 pounds for Eagle FC, but still. Anyway, with Unified MMA, since Canada has very little in the terms of promotions, I mean, we have like BTC, this unified MMA. We did have PFC, which was Prospect FC. Honestly, like I said, fucking Canadian promotions, far and few between. We had TKO, which was a long-standing one, even held likes of fucking George St. Pierre, but I don't know what the fuck's going on with that promotion. I haven't heard anything from it. Last time I heard they were in the verge of closing, or they were maybe closing their doors. I don't know. But anyway, Unified MMA put on their 45th event on Friday. I died watching this, so I ended up watching this the next day because they usually do this at like 10 at night, 11 at night, and it's not a UFC pay-per-view, so why the fuck am I staying up that late for it? So I ended up watching it the next day, but we had, the likes of just a bunch of Canadian fighters making their debuts, it looked like, and coming onto the main card, we had some lesser-known Canadian fighters like Harley King picking up a knockout win over Izzuddin Atma, and then Jeff Grand, scoring a unanimous decision against Colton Boxall. Just lower-end Canadian fighters, and then some that are, quite trying to make their names. Mac Lorson submitting fucking Phil Engeroff via rear naked choke. We had, I think that's Israel. I think that's the Israel flag. Eli Aronov submitting the long Polish name. Fuck that. You're going to hear that when I cover KSW, by the way, because I'm not going to even attempt that. Do you want me to disrespect your goddamn fucking culture by brutally butchering their names? I like Polish names. They're just really hard to pronounce. Anyway, even though he's a Canadian, he's Polish, but he ended up getting submitted. And then we had Maged Hamo fucking knocking out Neil Anderson. Chris Larson, well, that was for the featherweight championship, sorry. And then Chris Larson knocked out Grayson Wells in 37 seconds in the first round for the heavyweight championship. And then we had Ryan Ford versus Robert Hale in the main event for the, like I said, the weird-ass 175-pound championship. I don't know. Like I said, don't ask me. I don't know. I'm only very familiar with the regular MMA weight classes. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very familiar with fucking flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, fucking, you know what I'm getting at. I'm familiar with the regular weight classes, not this 165 bullshit, 175. What are we doing? Are we boxing now? Like, what the fuck? But anyway, that was it for Unified MMA 45. Next, we have Lux Fight League. Lux Fight League 22, to be precise. And this one in the main event had a lightweight championship and a strawweight championship. So let's get into it, starting with the first main card fight. Kevin Garcia up against Roy Benavidez. Kevin Garcia picking up a unanimous decision win over the 4-1 Roy Benavidez. Roy Benavidez falling to a 4-2, while Kevin Garcia rises to a 9-3. Then we get David Mendoza versus Mauricio Navas. And David Mendoza TKOs Mauricio Navas in the second round to rise to a 7-2. Mauricio Navas falls to a 6-3. Then we had Luis Rodriguez and Cesar Vasquez going up against each other at 135. All three of these bouts were bantamweight, by the way, with Luis Rodriguez picking up the unanimous decision win against Cesar Vasquez. Luis Rodriguez rising to a 13-2 record, while Cesar Vasquez falls to a 5-2 record. In the featured bout before the co-main event, we had Roman Cordoba going up against Adrian Oviedo, where Roman Cordoba picked up a unanimous decision win over Adrian Oviedo. Roman Cordoba rising to a 7-4, Adrian Oviedo falling to a 4-3. That brings us to the co-main event and the main event, respectively, where we had Saray Orozco going up against Diana Reyes for the strawweight championship, where Saray, I can't pronounce, Orozco. Yeah, Orozco. Fuck me, I'm dumb. Pardon me, I'm retarded sometimes. But Saray Orozco picks up the doctor stoppage win over Diana Reyes and becomes your Lux strawweight champion. That leaves us with the main event, which was S. Casio Dominguez against Edgar Delgado Jimenez. And Casio Dominguez picks up the last second TKO in the first round to become your Lux Fight League lightweight champion. And that wasn't it for the Latin America fights. We also had Ultimate Warrior Challenge 34. So, why don't we jump right into that? Because it's right next. Anyway, we had Ultimate Warrior Challenge 34, where we had a couple of Latin American fighters making their debuts. Actually, quite a few, 8 to be exact. Where, let's start off with a 150-pound, I'm assuming catchweight bout, between Carlos Daniel Chavez and Orlando Torres, where Chavez picks up a unanimous decision win, winning his debut, and of course, Torres fucking dropping his debut, obviously. That's going to be the theme with the first 4 fights, at least. And then in the next fight, at actual welterweight, not some weird catchweight bout, we had Eder Davis going up against C. Recoba Ramirez, where Davis picks up a unanimous decision win, winning his debut, vice versa. In the third fight of the night, we had our first finish, which was only a 27-second TKO of Eduardo Cardiel. Callum Parker picks that up, and that was your featherweight bout of the night. We move on to the fourth fight of the night, where Victor Colix, I think, goes up against Azil Hernandez, where Victor picks up the doctor stoppage at the end of the first round. Moving us on to our fifth fight at UWC 34, we had Raul Rosas Jr. going up against Jay Penazzola at bantamweight, and Rosas picks up the rear naked choke win in the second round, leading us to our sixth fight of the night, where Canadian Tyler Van Kill, and the only North American on the card, it seems, other than Rosas, picks up the rear naked choke win over Hiram Furukawa, which is, I shit you not, Latin. That is a Latin American, but I shit you not, that sounds like a Japanese name. Anyway, I just want to say that Tyler Van Kill picks up the submission win in the first round, moving us to our seventh fight of the night, where Fernanda Munoz goes up against Sandra Jimenez Chimayo at flyweight, where Fernanda Munoz picks up the ground and pound win in the first round, moving her to a nice 5-2 record. That moves us on to the eighth fight of the night, where Christian Rivas goes up against Gilberto Santos, and Rivas picks up the KO-TKO near the end of the very third round, ending up with a 7-1 record. And that brings us to the main event, where we had the lightweight or flyweight title on the line between Joao Camilo and Solenis Carvalho, where Joao picks up the rear naked choke win and becomes your Ultimate Warrior Challenge flyweight champion. That brings us to the next set of fights, which is the one where I'm going to absolutely butcher every name on the card, so bear with me. KSW 70. I absolutely love KSW. They put on great shows. It's just all the names in each event are fucking difficult to pronounce. However, for you guys, I'm going to try it. Probably going to fucking butcher it, but I'm going to try it. Anyway, the first fight of the night was a strawweight bout between Anitas Beckus versus Roberta Zocho. And Anita came out on top with a unanimous decision win, leading us to our next fight on the main card, which was Radoslav Pajutsky up against Jason Wilness. And apparently, poor Jason didn't drink his milk because his fingers broke, and that gave Radoslav the win. On all fucking jokes aside, though, when you suffer a broken bone in a fight and that's the cause of the end of the fight, it's pretty unfortunate. Unless that broken bone comes the way of like a submission or like a checked leg kick, it's almost always unfortunate when it happens, because you've put your heart and soul into this camp. You've trained most likely months and months on end, only for it to end like that, when you could have very well went on top, or even like you had a chance to knock the guy out, but your fingers broke, man. So yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. All jokes aside, it's unfortunate for Jason Wilness. But, these things happen in the sport. We see breaks all the time, and honestly, it just never gets easier, but they happen, man. Next fight of the night was Bartosz Letsko versus Damian Plowarczyk. I hope I'm saying these names right. God, please forgive me if you're Polish and I'm completely butchering these goddamn names, because I know it's bound to happen. It's just I feel bad regardless. But anyway, that fight ended in a unanimous decision, and that was at light heavyweight. Bartosz brought himself to a 12-2 record, and Damian dropped to a 5-1 record. The next fight of the night was between Marek Samuchuk and Uzagbi Ugono. I think I'm pronouncing these right. Like I said, please forgive me if I'm butchering these, but that ended in a TKO in the first round, and that led us into the next fight between Ivan Erslan and Rafael Kilanyuk, and that also ended in a TKO, which was fucking awesome. This is the one thing I love about Polish MMA, is there's almost always juice heads knocking each other out, just bludgeoning each other, and it's straight fun. It's fun for the whole family. But anyway, that was the feature bout. That brings us to the co-main event, where Ricardo Prasel goes up against Daniel God, again, forgive me when I butcher this last name, Omialnichuk, I think that's how you pronounce it. But Ricardo Prasel ends up winning in the first round via Achilles lock. Very nice submission, may I add, and ends up climbing to a 13-3 ranking. And that brings us to the main event, where it was the talk of MMA Twitter since there was no MMA going on, and KSW seems to be the MMA Twitter favorite when it comes to no UFC going on. But Mariusz Pudzianowski went up against Michał Materla, and Mariusz picked up the vicious uppercut punch that ended his opponent's lights in the first round. It is probably going to end up on highlight reels for this week, because it was a nice uppercut, perfectly placed, and just knocked him out cold. Also, one little thing to add that I noticed that only happens in like Polish and Russian, promotions. They paint the advertisements on their backs or their chests. Just, I don't know, little fun tidbit. Always found it the weirdest shit. Not my thing, but hey, I'm not going to fucking go into it. That being said, that's it for KSW 70. I love Polish MMA, and I can't wait for more cards from them. Let's go to Australia and New Zealand for Eternal 66, which happened, I believe, early this morning. As of recording this, it's Sunday. As you guys know, I record these on Sundays, and that happened early this morning. And the big news from that, and the only news I'd say is worthwhile talking about, that is the vicious leg break that Jack Becker suffered at the hands of Aiden Aguilera. And it wasn't even like a checked leg kick that happened either. It was a leg kick that landed, and you could see as soon as it landed, something in his leg dented. And, that's not normal when your shin dents in. So, he tried to put pressure on his foot, and his foot folded inward. And, oh, God, it was just very disturbing to look at. Unfortunate way to end the fight and to lose your lightweight title, because that was for the Eternal MMA lightweight championship. And the other unfortunate thing was Jack Becker was on his way to the UFC. There was talks that, Dana White was, thinking of potentially picking him up for Dana White's Contender Series or something. But I don't know, that might be a setback now, considering he just lost. But maybe because of the way he lost, it might not be a setback. We'll see. But, with these things, you'll never know. But anyway, that's it for Eternal MMA 66. That's honestly the only fight I wanted to talk about, because it was unfortunate. Good for Aiden Aguilera. Congratulations for winning the lightweight title. But genuinely, I can imagine that doesn't feel good to win that way. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel good to win the way that you did. You didn't do anything except, I think, just take a leg kick, and Buddy's leg broke. It was just a freak accident. It quite literally happened within the first kick of the first round. If you remember, that shit happened to Chris Weidman in his fight with Uriah Hall. It was within the first minute. A leg kick was checked or thrown. Chris Weidman breaks his leg. Just super unfortunate. You didn't get to see the actual skill set from Aiden Aguilera. So, I don't know. It's just very unfortunate. And very unfortunate for Jack Becker because, like I said, he was on his way to the UFC potentially. So I don't know how that's going to go now, if he's going to still end up on Dana White's Contender Series. But a break like that takes quite a bit to heal from. So by the time Dana White's Contender Series happens, I don't know if he'll be healed up properly. Like, maybe by the time the November, September season happens, he might just be healing up. But again, like, we don't know, man. And honestly, I wouldn't I wouldn't think, like, I think positive thoughts, obviously, but I wouldn't put my hopes up. I wouldn't get my hopes up, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, that was it for Eternal MMA 66. Very unfortunate scenes from good old Western Australia. And that's it for that. Let's move on to the next card. I'm not gonna go through it too much. Just a fun little tidbit I want to talk about. China has a tournament where they show off their best prospects, and it goes by the name of JCK MMA. JCK is the initials of a man who's the promoter of the tournament, and basically he does it each year. He has, like, I think 5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that, of prospects that just show their stuff. If maybe they'll get signed outside of China, maybe not. But that happened this weekend. I thought it was really cool. It's been happening the last couple weekends. So, I thought that was really cool. A really neat little aspect that I forgot. And it's all airing on Fight Pass. So I thought that was really neat. But that's it for that card. I wasn't going to go through all the prospects on the card and how the results went, because Lord fucking help me, if I butchered KSW's names, imagine how I would have done with all Chinese names. I shit you not. They are all of them Chinese prospects. So yeah, it was just, yeah, I'm not going to fucking even attempt that. If you think me butchering the KSW names was bad, yeah, fuck. Yeah, I'm not going to even try to fucking attempt that. Anyway, that's it for that. We're going to move on to CFFC 109, and then we have 2 more cards after that, which are, fun enough, Uriah Faber's promotions. We'll get into that in a bit, but let's get into CFFC 109. To start things off, we had Kendley St. Louis versus Ferraris Golden Jr., and that fight ended in a unique way where Kendley St. Louis caught Ferraris Golden Jr. in a guillotine choke while they were standing, regular standing guillotine, but here's the fun part. He lifted Ferraris off the ground, like his feet quite literally left the ground, and he went limp. He went out because he got lifted off the ground and he got choked out. It was brutal. It was a nice fucking submission win, and it was fucking brutal. It was awesome. The next fight of the night was fucking David Meshkaratzi going up against Thomas Majeski. And after a absolute back and forth scramble and grind fest, Thomas Majeski slaps in a guillotine choke and just does not let go until David has to tap. And then if that wasn't enough, we had I think a heavyweight clash between Ian Alston and David Kuklea. And Ian Alston made very quick work of David Kuklea, getting him to the ground and just raining down punch after punch and elbow after elbow, hurting him to the point where the ref had to step in because it was very obvious David was not protecting himself. He was taking violent damage, unnecessary damage, and had to be saved. So yeah, it was just unfortunate. The next fight was Vilson Andregioni up against Chris Vazel, and that happened to be an absolute slobber knocker where both guys went back and forth. It wasn't just a grappling fest, it was a complete display of all skills. Not like fight of the year caliber, but still a pretty decent fucking fight for Cage Fury. And both guys ground out a very close decision where Vilson Andregioni ended up getting the closely called split decision over Chris Vazel. That brought us to, I believe, what was our co-main event of the evening in Tishe Gothro and Efren Escareno. And Tishe Gothro just put on a complete grappling clinic where he completely grapple-fucked Efren Escareno and ended up winning a dominant unanimous decision, bringing us to what would have been the co-main event, but CFFC 109 ended up losing their interim title bout very last minute. when I believe it was the guy. I think it was like last minute the guy didn't make way, or no, it was a travel issue. Sorry, it was an issue with like the guy's visa, so they couldn't get the title fight to go through. So these guys had to step up on short notice, and boy did they fucking step up on short notice. Manuel Silva completely battering the veteran in Mauro Chalet, and just both guys swinging back and forth. Manuel Silva keeping in control of the whole fight, but Mauro having his moments, looking like he could potentially put out Manuel Silva's lights, and just it was a great fight for a main event. Clearly, it was meant to be the co-main event, but it was a good step up for both guys, and Manuel Silva defeated Mauro Chalet eventually via punches near the beginning half of round 2, just under 2 minutes. So that was all for CFFC 109. We have 2 cards left before I quickly cover the upcoming UFC cards. We have the 2 Uriah Faber A1 Combat events. So why don't we get right into that? Before I get into Uriah Faber's A1 Combat, though, I just wanted to make a quick little tidbit that Sean Brady and Clay Guida both grappled this weekend for Fury, and it was fucking awesome and hilarious. Sean Brady big brothered fucking, what's-his-face, Ben Saunders, and Clay Guida fucking fathered Alex Caceres, so it was pretty silly. But great wins for both great guys. Specifically Clay, I fucking love Clay. He's one of my favorite fighters, so it was awesome to see him win. But I completely forgot about that before it just completely clicked to me. I was like, yeah, let's get right into the A1 Combat. Oh, wait, Fury Pro Grappling. So I was like, let's just bring that up quickly. But yeah, that happened this weekend. Fury Pro Grappling 4 happened. They have that like every so often, so that's another fun thing about Cage Fury is they have that, and it's fucking awesome. They have UFC fighters grapple UFC fighters. It's pretty much like Submission Underground, so honestly, I love that shit. But anyway, forgot to mention that. Let's get into A1 Combat 2. The second ever Uriah Faber's A1 Combat is the first fucking event where they're going to crown a champion. Sorry, I had to think about that. Fuck. They're going to crown their first ever champion. Well, in this case, it was 2 champions. And then the next one, A1 Combat 3, well, we'll just get into that after this. But let's get into A1 Combat 2 first. To start up the card, we had Diego Bigelow versus Ian Maslow. And Diego Bigelow scored a very nice last-minute submission of a rear naked choke on Ian Maslow, impressing the matchmakers and the brass at A1 Combat. It was awesome. The next fight was Jalen Alston versus Chilio Gutierrez, and like a fucking lightning bolt struck, Jalen Alston against the cage, gets it to the ground, takes his back, slaps in the rear naked when they're on the ground like it was nothing, submitting Chilo Gutierrez by rear naked choke in under 2 minutes in the first round. That brings us to James Cannon and Ozzy Alvarez, what I think was knockout of the night, but not the fight of the night because they don't have knockout of the night there, but I think this was knockout of the night. James Cannon comes in just swinging. It's not even 2 minutes into the first round. He's swinging, landing head kicks. The head kick's so hard, even though it's blocked. The damage impact is just so bad. It wobbles him. And then just to finish it off, James Cannon lands a left hook that just drops Buddy, and he just keeps swarming on the punches for the KO. It was a nice finish. Great showing by prospects. Moving on to the next fight, we had Andrew Coyne versus Dorian Ramos. And this was an amazing fight where both guys were grapple heavy, but not boring grapple heavy. It was scramble after scramble. Great fucking striking on the feet because sometimes the guys didn't want to go to the ground with each other. It was just a great display of skill back and forth. Andrew Coyne just edging out the decision via 29-28 on all judges, or on 2 judges' scorecards. It was a split decision. Andrew Coyne goes home the winner. This brings us to the co-main event, the first of the 2 title fights. We had Aaron Phillips going up against Randall Buddy Wallace. Buddy Wallace is an absolute veteran in the game. I believe he's been in the UFC a couple times. He's been in all sorts of promotions all around. He has seen everyone and anyone fight. Aaron Phillips, obviously, if you heard me talk about The Ultimate Fighter last season, he's one of the guys from last season, part of their middleweight roster, and unfortunately, he came very short in his middleweight championship bout against Buddy Wallace, losing via bulldog choke. But there's no reason for him to hang his head about this, though, because he gave Buddy Wallace a run for his money, almost even having him finished at the end of the first round. Like, if there was a couple more minutes or at least a couple more seconds in that round, I genuinely believe that Aaron Phillips would have gotten the win easy. But anyway, Buddy Wallace, your new A1 Combat champion via bulldog choke under 3 minutes of round 2. This brings us to the main event, which, before I begin on the main event, I don't understand why Buddy Wallace versus Aaron Phillips wasn't the main event. But hey, whatever, I'm not the matchmakers. This main event was Hector Fajardo going up against Peyton Talbot, a 2-0 fighter who's younger than me, for the A1 champion, or the A1 Combat Bantamweight Championship. And to everyone's surprise, Peyton Talbot coming in, eating every hard-ass shot Hector Fajardo had, and just equally slamming harder shots into Fajardo, TKOing Fajardo near the end of round 2 to score the Bantamweight Championship. A 23-year-old 3-0 fighter is your A1 Combat World Bantamweight Champion. Incredible. That brings us into A1 Combat 3. Now, originally, it was supposed to be Jack Duffy versus Kano Moyer for the inaugural A1 Combat Flyweight Championship, but because Moyer missed weight, he pulled out of the fight instead of just saying, "Hey, I'm gonna fucking just make sure, we'll do an actual title fight. I'll pull out. You still get your win in your show. I don't get to lose my purse. No one gets fucked over, essentially." And Adrian Guzman versus John Simone became the main event. So let's get right into this card because, again, I love A1 Combat for this reason, and same with Jorge Masvidal's promotion, because both of which are nothing but prospect shows. It's not like they're taking a couple guys who have already fought in Bellator and UFC, like Eagle FC is. They're taking guys who want to work on their regional scene and work their way up to the UFC and giving them a platform. And that's exactly what happened with A1 Combat 3. It was absolutely nothing but dudes who had, dying records, debuting records, or just smaller records. Starting off with Joseph Herr and Marcelino Silva, where Joseph Herr was coming in 0-1. Marcelino Silva, I believe, was making his debut, and Joseph Herr coming in like a fucking wrecking ball, taking him to the ground and just raining down the shots to get a TKO via ground and pound in under 2 minutes of round 1. And then moving on to the next fight, we had Joshua Dillon versus Jay Pulliam in what was probably the craziest fucking fight of the night. Not the greatest fight of the night, but the craziest fight of the night, where both guys were just swinging, just throwing hands, and just smashing each other in the first round. It was back and forth. Could have been anybody's round. Joshua Dillon trying to fucking just make up for the lack of reach. Jay Pulliam doing a great job at just utilizing his reach. But ultimately, Joshua Dillon just bringing it down to the ground and slapping in a rear naked choke for the comeback victory in round 2 in under 3 minutes. That brings us to what I personally thought was fight of the night, and that was Exy Benitez versus Josh Dim. Both guys going at each other. It was nothing but just clinch game, grapple game, and striking game. Both guys against the fence, smashing knees into each other, hitting each other with hard shots, knocking each other down. There was 2 10-8 rounds, one for each guy. It was just insane. But ultimately, it was Exy Benitez with the grapple-heavy approach that saved his ass, that ultimately won him the split decision between him and Josh Dim. That moves on to the featured bout before the actual co-main event, not the fucking one it was before. Terrence Sadern going up against Isaiah Wright. Terrence Sadern coming in and making an absolute huge statement with a 42-second KO of Isaiah Wright, just swarming him with one perfectly placed punch to just end it all in under a minute. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful statement to put on the guys. It's like, hey, I'm here. I'm in your fucking promotion. Put me on a fucking title shot right away, boys. that brings us to the co-main event where we had probably the wackiest scoring where, sorry, I didn't mean to say that there was two 10-8s in the Exy Benitez fight. It was actually this fight I was thinking of. And like I said, ended up with probably the weirdest scores, but let's just get into it. It was Lucas Martino going up against Obadiah Johnson, and both guys showing their Muay Thai prowess. It was mostly a striking affair with little ground game, literally just mostly against the cage work, grappling against the cage and just striking. And both guys hitting each other with vicious shots. Obadiah Johnson coming in, swarming him in the first round, dominating Lucas Martino to a potential 10-8 round. But Lucas Martino kind of slowly coming back and trying to work a clinch-heavy game where Obadiah Johnson actually ended up getting a point deducted from him, I believe, or a point threatened. So there was the threat of that happening. And after that, I think just that threat kind of changed his mindset because it was like Lucas Martino just completely took over. That could have been either one's round, the second round, but I think it was Lucas Martino's round. It was the third round that was going to decide it all. And all of a sudden, bam, we just have Lucas Martino coming out like a fucking bull out the gate against the cage, landing knee after knee after knee against the cage, just landing combos against the cage, even with elbows and kicks, and just having Obadiah Johnson hurt to the point where it looked like the ref was going to step in a couple times. But ultimately, it went to the judges. 2 10-8 rounds scored. But weirdly enough, Lucas Martino getting the 29-27 decision. I don't know how that happened, but I mean, it was the right winner in my personal opinion, but I still don't know how that score happened. But hey, okay. Anyway, Lucas Martino ends up getting the unanimous decision. And that brings us to the main event of the evening for A1 Combat 3. We had John Simone up against Adrian Guzman. And John Simone coming in with the quick, vicious punches. He waited his turn, man. Guzman was throwing some nice shots, but ultimately it was John Simone using his footwork and his head movement and just landing counter shots before hurting Adrian Guzman and landing the absolute combos on him on the ground where the ref had to step in, and John Simone getting a nice TKO victory in the main event of A1 Combat 3. Honestly, just for regional promotions this weekend, it was fucking amazing. We were blessed. We were spoiled. We just had a lot of regional MMA to watch. So for people who are UFC casuals, it's okay. But for the hardcore MMA fans, you guys thought we had nothing this weekend because there was no UFC. You were dead wrong. We had so much going on this weekend. And this episode was a prime example of exactly that. But before we go, I just want to take a quick look at the next two UFC events that are happening, at least the main cards. Let's just take a look at next week's card, I believe it is. Yeah, next weekend's card. We have Alexander Volkov versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik in a heavyweight main event between two kickboxers. Personally, I don't think that's going to go the way we think, but hey, I mean, crazier shit has happened. We've actually had absolute slobber knockers at heavyweight sometimes, so we'll see. But I don't know if that's going to go the way it's supposed to. But the co-main event is what I'm excited for. Dan Ige, Movsar Evlev. Movsar is an absolute beast, and Dan Ige is a gamer. And he's ranked where he is for a reason. So this co-main event is almost guaranteed to either have a guaranteed finish, or it's just going to be back and forth slobber knocker bullshit the whole time. And then we have Mike Trezano versus Lucas Almeida at featherweight, and Karine Silva and Poliana Bortello. On top of that, we have Alonzo Menefield, Felice Herrig, and Karolina Kowalkiewicz is actually making a comeback. Like, this next weekend's card is going to be a sleeper card, and I'm excited for it. But if that wasn't enough, after that, the weekend after, we have fucking UFC 275. Do you want to know what's on that card? We have Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka in the main event. Co-main event, we have Valentina Shevchenko versus Talia Santos. And then the featured bout, if those two absolute slobber knockers weren't enough, before we even get those two, we have fucking Weili Zhang versus Joanna 2. Like, that should be a 5-round fight as is. And then before that, we have Rogério Bontorin versus Manuel Kep. and then Jack Della Maddalena versus Ramazan Emeev. And fucking, oh my god, like, even the prelims are actually stacked. Like, we have Brendan Allen versus Jacob Malkoon, like, Andre Fiallo, Jake Matthews. Like, this is going to be such an insane card. The next 2 weeks are going to be fun for UFC. And apparently there's going to be more regional MMA like LFA and Titan FC as well. So I am going to be a happy, happy boy when it comes to combat sports. So I'm so fucking excited. But anyway, that's it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed all the regional MMA we had this weekend. And I hope you guys enjoyed that little announcement. And I hope you guys actually check out MMA Gaming on Twitter and YouTube. And just check out all the dope shit that they're doing for the EA UFC community. Anyway, I've been Dillo. That's it for this episode. I will see you guys in the next episode. Enjoy the rest of your week. Peace out, guys.
You've been listening to the Dillo's Dojo podcast. Keep in touch with Dillo on his social media at Dillo Ross on Twitter and Dillo Ross on Instagram.